Hi, everybody. I'm MC from Global Micro. We basically work with Flowgear hand in hand on partnerships and other projects. Essentially, Kyle and Rick and Nick went through a lot of work today just to show you guys some of how you build some of the specific things in Flowgear that you might want. Some of the more custom things that make Flowgear much more than an iPad system for your company. Some of these things included custom nodes and custom user interfaces. So I just wanted to show you guys what it might look like if you brought all these things together and built an end-to-end system in Flowgear. And to do that, I wanted to show you an end-to-end accounts management system that focuses on expediting and simplifying the processing of debit orders and EFT transactions in your business, right? You might have heard about some of this earlier today when JJ was talking about some of the systems that you might build. Now, we call this system FIntegrate. Here we've basically set up a nice demo environment so no sensitive data is being shown, and but it basically reflects the whole system you might see. So what we did here is, as you just saw, you could build your React app in any sort of IDE that you want, and then publish it to Flowgear, which means you're free to do things like what we did here and use a custom library of your choice to build graphs and other grids into a user interface that pulls data from workflows that you created pretty simply using something like SQL nodes, etc., transforming that data into whatever format you want, and then have that consumed by a library of your choice to display it in a dashboard like this, right? So easy dashboards that you can create for your solutions. Demo day. Just 1 second. I think I just need a refresh. There we go. Session died. Everybody's been there. There we go. It's going back there. So what you saw on the dashboard there was a collation of data and processing that happened on the other pages you see on the app here. It's going to F11 so it's easier to see. So what we did here was we decided we were going to display to the user all the invoices that are due at the end of this month from the actual accounting system. So we built a workflow that integrates directly into Sage, in this case. And what we did was pull all the due invoices out and filter them in a way that would make sense to the accounts person using it right now. They might say, who owes us what by the end of the month? We know that these people regularly are billed these amounts. So let's go find them, right? Let's see what's owed by the end of the month. Here the accounts person can then quickly and easily look at those invoices that are due every month, edit the amounts that they want to charge the client if there was some arrangement made. You'll see there's a lot of pages of those invoices here. And then pretty easily just add it to a batch of a batch that will actually be sent to the bank to charge them. We'll get to that part. So the first thing here is they can add it to a batch. So here we say we can call this May 01, and we'll just say, or we'll say DO batch. Right, you can call it whatever you want. And you can say the debit order date, so the date the bank should action this is on the 1st, right? We were able to implement a nice model there, make it easy for the accounts person to create their batches. Then we're just going to wait for it to load real quick. Now, what you can see here is, I'm just going to show you real quick what happened in the backend, because this is a bit more of a technical session, and you guys need to be able to see that how we built that. But basically, what you can see here is we've got a workflow here that just pulls the eligible invoices, and here's the workflow design. Basically, we've got a connection to a SQL node, runs a relatively simple query and gets the data out of Sage, right? Okay, so there's going to need to be some React skills and some SQL skills to do some of these things, right? On that note, Flowgear does have professional services, so anything you guys need that you don't have the in-house skills for, we're there for you. But so we have our SQL query here, pulls the data out of the accounting system, does a bit of transformation here. We basically are just checking if that debit order date, so it isn't a public holiday because the bank doesn't operate in those days, and we transform that data into what we want to see on the front end, right? So very relatively easy way to transform what's in the back end into something that's easy to understand on the front end, right? Then when this workflow ran, you'll see in your logs, and this is nice about Flowgear, is we log everything, right? So you will see that last load every time somebody loaded that page, what happened every time. If there's ever an issue, you can go and look here. Oh, this is what the person retrieved when they ran the page, etc., right? Perfect full-scale logging of everything that's being done in your system, right? So then moving along, we can see on this debit order page, we can see here this new batch I just created, dear batch mayor 1. And what we also managed to do here was then allow the accounts person to go and edit the batch they just created. So here they can go ahead and change any of the amounts that's going to be charged to the customer. They can remove any of the invoices that were added. They can save this batch after they've made their edits. And they can also turn this batch into an automated batch. So what we did here is there are two modes for this transaction to operate in. We can either make it automated so that and you can set it so 7 days beforehand, it will send out notifications to the user automatically because we know what the debit order date is. So just 7 days before that, we send out notifications to the client saying we're going to charge you this amount, and then that happens for each client in the list. So we've got an invoice for each client or invoices for each client. Tell them what we're going to charge them. Then automatically we post to the bank a day before the debit order date. Please action all these transactions in this batch on this day, so the day of the debit order date, so on the 1st, right? In this case, the integration is with FIntegrate, so clear by the name, FIntegrate being the F&B FTP solution for integrations, right? Okay. So we would send that batch, and then they would process it on that day. And then we would get feedback from F&B telling us whether or not they accepted the transactions that we posted. That we log, we keep track of using an always-on workflow. So in the background, we just keep listening. You guys will probably shown some always-on workflows. Always-on workflow just keeps track of files that land in the appropriate folder that come from F&B, and we just check whether or not that batch that was posted was accepted. And then in the front end, we basically show you on the dashboard how many of those transactions succeeded. You can see which batches still need to be processed, what are upcoming ones that are going to be processed, etc. And we also have full transaction history. If you click through from the dashboard, you can go back and see every transaction that was processed through the system. And in this case, you can see specifically the transactions that were processed for that batch. Another big part of accounts systems is the day-to-day task of managing what came in, EFTs that are paid to your company that are essentially just credits on your bank statement that you need to match up with customers via the reference that you find on the statement. So what we did for that was we created a system where each statement that gets pulled every morning from the bank, also through a FIntegrate integration, lands as a batch in the system here. It gets saved to a database, and then we just surface it here again using a workflow. Everything is a workflow with an API call, right? Functioning as an API call. We then show the bank statements to the user, and what the accounts person can then do is they can go and look at this batch, and what we've done for them is we have basically looked at what this statement reference is, and then we've said, which company's reference does this look like? Or which invoice in the system does this look like it's a reference for? So we've done some LLM intelligent searching through our Sage data to match up references that we get on the bank statement, which could really be anything, and saying, of these credits that we received on our bank statement, who do we think this credit belongs to, right? We pre-process that for the user, and then when the accounts person comes here, they can already see what we think how the transaction should match up. So we can say here that this statement reference here for Urban Cave looks like it belongs to Urban Cave, etc. Then if the accounts person's happy, they can make any edits they want, etc. And we were able, again, in React, to do relatively complex things, like, for example, allow the user to discreetly remove certain payments that they might not want to pay in this way, or allocate to these specific invoices, and remove them from the transaction when it gets processed, so that they don't, and then show them how much is still left for the invoices that we think this amount belongs to, so that they can pretty easily, and in a granular way, control how the system is going to behave. So when the accounts person is happy and they've looked at all this, they can go back to the batch, to that day's batch, select it, and then they can just say post EFT batches. What this will then do is it will go to the Sage system and credit each customer and allocate to the invoices that were selected there the amount that was allocated to the invoice. Basically saving about 90% of our accounting staff's morning in time, because they used to spend half their day doing this job, right? Now they do it in about 5 minutes. So that is when processing EFTs for the day. We've also made it easy for our account staff to look at the actual statements that have come in for every day by just going to a panel here, so that they never have to leave this system. They never need to go to Sage anymore. They never need to actually go to the bank and pull the bank statements themselves. They can look at the bank statements here, but in a way that we can improve for them. So we make it easy for them to see only the credits, only the debits for the day, and any other data that they might need. We also are able to try and determine which customer these debits or credits are for them, so that they don't have to think as much for themselves and do so much analysis on the statements that they're working with. Again, the system does full logging. So all we really needed to build on top of Flowgear here was some pretty basic batch tracking, item tracking, and audit logging that allows us to just make sure that we are keeping track of every single thing that happens in the system, including whether client notifications have gone out, whether transactions have been processed, what has been reversed, etc., etc. So basically, what we have here is a full end-to-end solution built entirely on Flowgear, just via the built-in React front-end application functionality, talking to workflows through API calls. That was essentially built in about, I'd say about 3 months, where this sort of integration and functionality, if we had to build it from scratch, would have probably taken us more than a year. Um, and we were also able to do it um, with, with by leveraging a lot of the tools that were already built into Flowgear. For example, just things like the Sage API that is actually more like an SDK that is quite a bit of a challenge to get into working. With Flowgear, it was much easier because there was a working connector that we just out of the box worked in a much more intuitive way that we could just leverage. So I'd say basically we also allow people to, we're also productizing this at the moment. And as it stands, you would need basically a Flowgear standard plan and about 150 hours of professional services time to get this FIntegrate solution implemented at your business. If you didn't want to go through the whole thing of building it yourself or having our professional services build it for you. All right, I think that's about time for questions. Anybody have any questions? Yes. Security. Yeah, so security is managed by Flowgear, which is a big boon because that's like probably about a quarter of the time we would have spent is just security and user management and all that. Because it's already baked into Flowgear, what we did is we just have roles created in Flowgear's already existing user management. But then what we also do is we leverage the SDK to just very easily see who's logged in. And then we can say, okay, we know that only these people should be able to use this application, right? Or it's only for, yeah. And then we can control and say, okay, cool. If you are not in this list, that we basically put in the database and say, okay, cool, these people with these roles. So in fact, what this app does is it doesn't show you all the menu items depending on who you are. So we've got full role-based stuff, and very easy to do because all we need to do is save who this person is, and then we have to say what's his role. Simple one table. You read out of this guy's logged in. What role does he have? And then you just manage it that way. We didn't implement AAD because we didn't. Well, the thing is, okay, let me put it this way: it is actually AAD as well, because because in Flowgear you have the option to turn on AAD and enforce it on your site, so that everybody who logs into your Flowgear instance has to sign in through AAD, or SSO. Yeah, exactly. So you can pretty easily just ensure that everybody is using SSO when they log in, and that their roles are defined that way. So, yeah, absolutely. Yes. Well, okay. So we were already using a lot of integrations through the Flowgear platform, right? It already cut down significantly on our time. And then we decided, well, should we rather go and build a completely different system outside of Flowgear, or should we just try and keep leveraging what we have? And then we talked a little bit, and we were like, well, all this is already there. Let's just use it. And it just cut down on like half, at least more than half the time, because it was just a matter of upskilling a bit on React for our local team, taking a relatively quick course. Everybody got comfortable with React, and then we just plugged into the SDK that Flowgear provides, and it makes every API call and user management piece of the puzzle so much easier to do and very easy to access and use. So we just knew it would save us a lot of time, that's why, really.
So is there a cost for running out multiple apps on Flowgear? Because is it still just your consumption of your workloads that's the cost?
It's just the consumption of your workflow. So yeah, there's no additional cost. Yeah, the only thing to think about, to be fair, is because every one of these user interfaces are driven by a workflow, right? I run a workflow every time I load a page, right? Um, I'm not just thinking about my data synchronizations and communications. I'm also thinking about additional workflows that I need to facilitate the user interface. And so that might be a bit of extra on your limits or whatever that might be. And that's why I said you should probably look at a standard plan for a system like this if you're going to, because you will have quite a few active workflows. If people are using it every day, they're firing off. This system uses about 20 workflows just to work. That's including back-end workflows that are doing always-on work. But the front end itself probably uses about 10, maybe 12. And that's on top of what you're already using, which could make a difference.
I think MC, just to add to that, one of the features it uses is the enterprise API feature. And that feature is only available on the standard plan. So
Yeah, standard plan and app, yeah.
starting point would definitely be the standard plan.
Definitely. Any other questions? Yes. Oh, it's fast. I mean, the internet here is not great. I'm actually tethering off my phone and it's in my pocket, but it's fast. I mean, so when we're talking about these amount of transactions here, this amount of invoices, I just went to page 20. It actually just loaded page 20 in that moment. But basically, if I refresh this is a clean sort of workflow refresh. I just pulled all these records. I can't tell you exactly how many there are. I'm going to guess it's somewhere in the region of 500, maybe 2,000 records between there somewhere. And that just loaded. Like it's extremely fast, especially on the new platform. With your Azure resources that you're being allocated now on your own tenant, you're not sharing resources with a lot of other people. And with React being relatively lightweight, etc., everything is very fast right now. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. That's why it made sense to us as well. Yeah, that's why it made sense to us as well. I mean, the first thing you think about is you don't necessarily have visibility of everything that's happening in the background, right? All these workflows are running. They might be always on. Some people might be going into Flowgear and running their workflows manually, but you don't always know what they're doing. And the first thing you might want is just a way to visualize that. This is what the system was doing over the last couple of days. And when we thought about how we visualize things, we just realized immediately, like, well, the easiest way to do that is just get some library that draws graphs for you, pull the data out and give it to that. And when you have the ability to do that in React, you can do anything, right? And so the natural thing for us to do was to build a front end that could display that using any library we wanted. And it just makes sense. If you're doing a lot of other syncing already, just going and saying, well, let's just visualize that, and then build some controls on top of that, and then let people manipulate that data. And then all of a sudden you're just like, well, why not just build everything in here? And everything else we might want to do in the business, we can just build off of that, or just pull out of the same data, or enrich that data and work from there. And you can just, every area of your business can just be run in one place. I mean, just as a side note, I didn't really prepare this, but just something we do, for example, here is we've got data health, right? JJ also mentioned that earlier. We've got products we sell at Level Micro, right? people have subscriptions with us. We know that in Microsoft Partner Center and our other management system, ConnectWise, that does our billing, we know that there are subscriptions on this side and people are being billed on that side, right? We need to make sure that the subscriptions that they actually have products for is actually what they're getting billed for, right? We have integrations that are supposed to keep those things together. We have that in Flowgear. But that doesn't always work right. There are errors, things didn't match up, values weren't allowed on this side that actually that we wanted to have pushed on the other side. And here we have a dashboard that just looks at that data and says, we can see that 412 of our subscriptions are out of sync at the moment. We can see that from Microsoft every morning when we check the change orders for how people's subscriptions changed, how many of those didn't actually sync into our systems correctly. All that sort of thing is being run at our company at the moment directly through Flowgear, but also visualized and managed in user interfaces built directly on the platform, which saved us a lot of time if we wanted to make that sort of thing available to users completely outside of Flowgear. We've toyed with the idea of doing that sort of thing. The thing there is user management would become it would become tricky. You might want to set up a different site. So we have different, you're able to have under your tenant multiple sites, for example, and you might have your customer-facing site in that case rather, and you'd have people navigate there and have your users managed there, right? That way, you don't have a problem with a user clicking on things they shouldn't, right? Because everything's in this menu, and that's the biggest problem, right? You have this thing where your custom app sits in this menu, and people might not need, you might not want people to go places you don't want them to go. That can also be managed with roles and so on, and that's another thing we can look into and can definitely be done if it's needed. But except for those minor things, I don't see a reason why not. All right, any other questions? All right, I'll let you guys go. It's kind of stuffy in here. So thank you very much. Have a good day.
Emps, thanks for that impressive presentation over there. Everybody, I'd like to just say thank you very much for coming today and really sticking it out till the end. As I bid you farewell, remember, goodbye is just, I think, a temporary parting, but integrations are forever. So come outside, join us for a drink, and it'll be great to just have a social catch-up. Thank you.